Good morning on what is a cool, bright but sunny day. It is Monday, September the 5th, and I have a heavy parcel to continue going through, as well as a nice hot cup of tea. So, pulling out a few things. So, copy of the Strontium Block role-playing game and the Road Trooper role-playing game, both of which are supplements for Judge Dredd and the Worlds of 2000 AD role-playing game, all discontinued sadly, but thoroughly worth tracking down if you can find them, because the source books themselves in particular are very good. So what we've got in here is this bundle, and it contains several scenarios for the role-playing game Space 1889, and this is oh god, this is going to be fun. This is the fate of the Angahiaa, or Angahiaa. Well, yes, that's about as best as I'm going to do with the pronunciation of this. Now, this is a scenario for Space 1889, a role-playing game that first appeared in 1989 and was published by Game Designers Workshop. And it's a steampunk role-playing game. And what it says? It says here, everything Jules Verne could have written, everything H.G. Wells should have written, everything Arthur Conan Doyle dreamt up but never published, as it was too fantastical. Because in the setting of Space 1870, Thomas Edison uses the ether propeller to travel to the moon and back, and then others go to Mars, and there they discover the existence of another civilization. Yes, there are Martians, and there are canals, and it's a desert world. And then you do the same on Venus, which is a jungle hothouse, complete with lizard folks and dinosaurs. And then you've got, basically very quickly you have the European powers, as was there once in the 19th century, to go and occupy or colonize parts of those worlds. So you have German, French, British and Belgian colonies on these worlds, and others. So this is a science fiction game against the backdrop of colonialism and imperialism on other worlds. Now, that is not always exactly, with a bit of hindsight, and not something that everyone that is seen as necessarily a good thing. And not necessarily that someone wants to roleplay. Now, this scenario is actually not for the original game. There was a second edition published in 2018 by Clockwork Publishing, a German publisher, which shifted the emphasis in the game from the British Empire to the Prussian Empire, and was much the more interesting as a result. And also expanded sort of like the possibilities and so on, so it wasn't quite so much on the colonial elements of the background were there. Plus, then in addition, there's also a third edition coming out of the role-playing game, and that will expand options and again explore the setting away from that those sort of like imperial drives and the colonialism of the period. Anyway. The fate of the Angahiaa. Mars and its city-states are the most important concerns of Earth's colonial politics. Lithium is a critical, highly sought-after resource, and not all nations have equal access to it. But the Martians are playing their own games and seek to use their contacts with the humans for their own plans. Now, the other thing important about Mars is it has skyships, ships that fly and sail and can be rowed by banks of rowers or slaves in some instances, and are even powered by great propellers, so you have different nations fielding different types of ships. And there's a board game called Sky Guardians of Mars, which is about that kind of combat in the skies of Mars. And what you need to achieve lift, literally, is liftwood, which is only grown on Mars. The Canal Prince of the small Martian city of Angahiaa seeks to expand its power through a trade treaty with the German Empire. But other groups within the city do not want any human influences, while others seek power over the city themselves and use the foreigners for their own schemes. The player characters forming the German delegation. Now there's the difference between the editions there. The player characters form the German delegation. Are drawn into the midst of the battles, intrigues for power in the city. They must maneuver between the decadent Canal Prince, his enemies in the nobility and guilds, as well as the priests, slaves, and the hill Martians of the surrounding valleys, to find friends and allies. The player characters can greatly influence the fate of Angahiaa. For a successful mission in the Martian city, social skills and a readiness to deal with the local situations are required. All in all, a wide variety of challenges await the player characters in ensuring that physical, inventive, or academic skills are all of great use. The player characters should be willing to support Germany's interest, or at least be neutral to them. Even so, options are provided should that not be the case. So you could easily take this and potentially adapt it to the nation power of your choice. So if your player characters are allied with France or Britain, they have their own empires. But then they could easily shift it to those interests, or you could have the American mercantile interest, because America doesn't have colonies, of course, but it does have a burgeoning mercantile interest on Mars. So what we've got inside, okay, oh, the nice illustration of the one-man gyrocopters, which are possible with liftwood. And we open up and we've got an earthly forward and explaining the situation, and recommendations for the style of play. We'll hit the type of characters that you want before we get into the introduction and discussing plot, archetypes, German delegation, mission briefing in Berlin, mission briefing on Mars, and introduces the first character, main character Gustav Schmoller. There we go, that's all set up. And here we have, so this is a bit of a different setup, take upon the organisation of the books, because the previous ones I've looked at, all the stats and stuff have been in the back, but here up front we have a description of the key NPC, complete with his stats and with an illustration, which I greatly appreciate. And then we have Fritz Witzham von Exdat. No illustration, but and then player characters leave for Earth, arrive on Mars. So we definitely have a sense of really leaving the planet, going somewhere to Mars, and exciting, and travelling through. We've got a guide to where the travelling, because you essentially player characters land on Mars, they land on the German colony, and then we'll travel out to the particular location. So taking the golden pearl of the Meridani, assign us to Emden and beyond. So we've got different encounters there, activities that the player characters can get themselves involved in. So we've got a guide to the city, government in Emden, the mobility, the guilds, and so on. Daily life, religion, all there. So a nice, good overview of the location. And then we have actually a side quest as well. I do like that. So we have the rat catchers of Emden and dealing with the bacterial waste decomposition, because the sewers work slightly differently than they do on Earth. There are actually creatures which actually aid with the decomposition of waste. Then we've got an explanation of the sort of like power structures and persons of note in Emden, and reward for getting involved in the troubles of the city, and various NPCs. So yeah, that's quite a busy sort of like location, and quite a lot of NPCs involved. Then we've got side quest, Mystery of the Dead Flyers. So there's actually quite a lot going on in the city, and it's not just go there, do that. There's opportunities to tell other stories, have other adventures, get involved in the events of the city, and then we've got a timeline, and the Treaty of Emden, sorting that out, potential mistakes and spies, and the festivities of the events of having the delegations from Earth arrive, and so on. So lots of role playing there, and dealing with sort of like various different factions. And this has got a lot more illustrations in it as well. This is actually sort of like a much more interesting scenario than I've looked at so far. Yeah. And then you've got various sort of tasks like the gathering of the it's like the Interplanetary Workers Associations. You've got like a union there, and then we have to the second task, the printer press cylinder. And then, you know, we've got the spoils of the labour dispute, quest, side quest, trip to the Liftwood Grove, so the player characters can actually go and see where it's grown. That's really that's a nice touch. And there's really quite a lot going on in this scenario. So it's fairly busy, lots of characters, nice illustrations. It's all a bit grey. It would have been nice to have some colour in here, but just from when you're looking through this, I'm quite impressed with quite a lot that's going on. We've even got a side quest, Traitor to the Empire. Threats on the steps, so you can have attacks by the essentially by the Martians from outside the city, to the Hill Martians, and some history as well. So you actually want, and ultimately you've got an epilogue there at the end. So what you've got in the Fate of Angahiaa is a really kind of busy sandbox. Now the player characters are going to go into the sandbox sort of like with a definite aim. That definite aim is negotiating the trade treaty. But there's a lot more going on in the city, and I think that what this really nicely does is really sort of hook the player characters into that one central storyline, and then the game master can sort of like get her players involved in other ones as well, which will help bring the city alive and make it sort of like a sort of showcase it and show that there's much more going on. So it's quite a busy little scenario. Thoroughly approve of that. A lot more interesting and involved than the previous two scenarios that I looked at, and with a little bit of effort, I think adaptable to the campaign of your choice and the power groups that you're using in your campaign. So yeah, that's the Fate of Angahiaa for Space 1889. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below, and if you've got any comments or feedback, I appreciate you taking the time to post those. And of course, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a parcel containing a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit that subscribe button down below. In the meantime, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.